I want to flip houses where I screw up and still make good money. I don't want to do deals where I screw up and don't make very much money or lose money. That's not how I want to flip houses. Fixing and flipping houses can be one of the most lucrative businesses you can do, but you have to understand the numbers. The math doesn't lie. Fixing and flipping at the end of the day, it's nothing more than a math equation. Understand the math and you can be wildly successful. Okay, let's break it down. I want to show you the formula for how to be very successful fixing and flipping. First thing we start with when we're going to fix and flip is we have to determine the ARV. ARV stands for after repair value. It's the future value of the property once it's fixed up. Now, how do you determine ARV? Well, you're going to go into that neighborhood and you're going to look at other similar homes that have recently sold that have been fixed up. That is how we determine the ARV of a subject property. Everything centers around that ARV number. We start there. Nothing else can happen until we really have our head around the after repair value. Once I establish the ARV, the next thing I have to do is I have to take right off of the top of that number things that I have to consider in every single deal I do. So no matter what I do, no matter what price I buy it for, no matter what the ARV is, no matter any of that, I have fixed cost to buy and sell a property. All of these three things here, the financing, the closing, and the profit, are a percentage of the after repair value. That's a very common way to do the math on fix and flip. So what that means is it means the higher the ARV, then the higher the financing cost, the higher the closing cost, and ideally, the bigger the profit I make. But what does that percentage look like? How do we factor that percentage in? If you have your own cash to pay for the entire purchase and the entire rehab, then you wouldn't have a financing cost because you're self-funding the deal. But most people don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting on the sidelines that they can put into deals. Most of us go out and we borrow the money to do the deals. Now I teach how to borrow 100% of the capital. That's all the money to buy it and all the money to fix it up. So I'll put a link in the description below which shows how to get 100% funding for your fix and flip deals, but that's totally possible. I do it on almost all of my deals. So I'm going to borrow the money to buy it, borrow the money to fix it up. Well, there's a cost to that money. We call that carrying cost or financing cost. Now that financing cost is going to be a percentage of the amount of money that I borrow. If you're going to borrow 100% of the capital, we can expect to pay about 6% of ARV to cover all of the costs to borrow the money to buy it and fix it. Now what about closing cost? This one we want to factor about 9%. So that means the ARV or the price I resell it for, about 9% of that number is going to cover closing costs. Closing costs when I bought it, and the majority of the closing costs when I resell it. Because when I resell it, I also pay commissions to agents. So that right there might be 5 to 6% of our total 9% budget is just in commissions. Now let's get to profit. What kind of profit do we want to make off of our ARV? This right here, I like to budget 15%. So whatever ARV I sell it for, I want to aim for a budget to make about 15% of that number in my profit. Well, if you add up 15, 9, and 6, this equals 30%. So what I want to do now in my fix and flip formula is if I'm going to resell this thing at 500,000 or whatever the ARV is, I want to subtract off the top 30%. 6 for financing, 9 for closing, 15 for profit. That means I'm going to multiply my ARV times 70%. The 70% formula means I'm taking 30% off the top, 6 for financing, 9 for closing, 15 for profit. Then we've got to spend money to fix it up. Let's say that we have that rehab number, and whatever that rehab number, we subtract that off of the top to get to our buy price. This equals our buy. ARV, in this case, 70% of ARV minus repairs. That will get me the number I need to buy that deal for. That will give me a 15% profit and a budget for 9 closing and 6 for financing. Now, what if I move this formula to 75? A lot of flippers buy at 75. Then that means I'm only subtracting 25 off the top. So where's that difference come from? Well, unless you're funding your own deals and you don't have a financing budget, that's not most people, Closing fees are what they are. It costs money to buy, it costs money to sell. You're gonna pay agents commissions. You can't really steal from that budget very much. It's mostly gonna come from here. So this just lowers this down to 10%. Now 6, 9, and 10 equals 25, which means you're buying it at 75% of ARV. Guys, this is like third grade math, I think. So I hope you're following along with me here. Every time I go up in my percentage off of ARV, really the only place to take that from is profit. That's it. So these are fairly fixed. They're fairly consistent no matter what deals you're doing. The only way to steal from the formula is to steal from the profit. Now, clearly, if you're buying at 25% of ARV, less repairs, you can pay more for deals. So you'll get more deals. You'll make less, but you'll do more deals. If you move this back to 30, so if we put this back at 30%, this has to go back to 15, which means now I have to buy at 70, not 75. That means I'm gonna have to buy this deal a little bit deeper, which means I gotta make more offers, or I gotta say no a lot more to deals in the market because I'm waiting to get that good deal. Now, what if I change this to 20%? Well, if I wanna make even more profit, then this would be 35% in my total budget for fixed cost, and then this would be 65%. So, when do I go to 65? When do I go to 70? When do I go to 75? As a general rule of thumb, I like to stay at 70%, and I don't like to do low income. If you're gonna go lower income, that increased your risk, maybe you wanna be at 65. Or if you go super high, maybe you're going luxury, and because you're at the top of the market, to offset some risk, you wanna have a deeper buy. You wanna have more profit budget to offset the risk. Your profit should be equal to your risk. That's typically how we look at this. So the other way that you might change this formula is if it's a carpet paint, you're in and out super quick. It's gonna take you 2 weeks to do the rehab and back up on the market. Okay, maybe you say, you know what, I'm okay to make a little bit less profit because I'll turn the deal faster. So again, you wanna be thinking about your flipping business from the math and the risk and the potential in profit. As a general rule of thumb, I try to stay in neighborhoods that are between 400 and 600 in flipping. That's my favorite price point to fix and flip. And I like to be at 70% on those deals. Now guys, we're doing the math here manually. I have a free calculator where you just plug this stuff in, it automatically calculates it for you. I'll give it to you for free. Just go to mydealanalyzer.com and you can have a software tool that does all of this for you. It's really cool. But for the sake of learning, I want to do it long form so you can kind of see the math. So let's take this scenario here. Let's say that I've got a deal. I'm going to pull up my calculator right now and let's look at this one right here. Let's take this scenario here. Let's say that our ARV is 400,000. Okay, so I'm going to take 400 in my calculator. I'm going to multiply that by 0.7 or 70%, and that's going to put me at 280. So if ARV is 400, I multiply that by 70%, which is the same as subtracting 30%, I'm at 280. So that means all in on this deal, I want to be at 280 and it's worth 400. Why? Again, because I'm going to spend 6% of 400 on financing. So let's do that. 400,000 times 0.06 is 24. I'm going to spend 24,000 on financing. Let's take our closing costs. 400 times 0.09. I'm going to spend 36,000 on closing fees. And then I want to make 15%. So then I'm going to take 400,000 times 0.15, and that equals 60,000. So I want to make, after everything, $60,000 on this deal. Okay, so that's my math here. This right here, 24,000, 36, and 60 add up to 30% that I take right off the top of my 400 before I've even done anything. So I'm all in at 280, but then there's rehab. So I'm going to take 280 minus, in this example, 50,000 in rehab. So minus 50 equals 230. So if I can buy this deal for 230, I'm going to spend 50 in rehab. I'm going to sell it for 400. I'm going to pay 24 in financing, 36 in closing, and then I'm going to walk away with 60,000. Let's do the same scenario with this formula, the 75% formula. Well, think about it. My financing stays at 24, my closing stays at 36, but what's the difference in my profit? Well, if you paid attention earlier, my profit is going to be 10% of 400 or 40,000. So now in this scenario, I would only be making let's put it up here. I'd be making a $40,000 profit. So that one's for this one, that one's for this one. Okay, so at 70%, I'm gonna make 60,000. At 75%, I'm gonna make 40,000. And then let's get to our buy price. So I'm gonna take 400 times 0.75 minus 50 puts me at 250. So on this one, I would buy it for 250. Okay, so see the difference. If I'm flipping at the 75% formula, I'm okay to make $40,000. I can pay 250. If I'm competing against somebody that's at the 75% formula and I'm a flipper at the 70% formula, I have to buy that same deal for 230 because I'm trying to make 60 in profit at the 70% formula, whereas they're okay to make 40,000 at the 75% formula. See the difference? Now, why can't Jerry be happy making 40,000 on this deal versus 60,000? Well, here's why. I'm all about margin over volume. If I can do deals at 70% and make 60, then I can do fewer deals in a given year than someone at the 75% formula. I can do way fewer deals to make the same amount of money. That's one reason. The second reason is this doesn't always work out exactly how you hope. It doesn't always pencil out that way. The reality is maybe you don't get 400. Maybe your budget goes over. That's the reality. You don't get 400 and it costs you more than 50. I want a buffer so that I go into the deal to make 60, but then if things don't work out, I make 40. Instead of going in to make 40, things don't work out and I only make 20. See the difference? I want to build a buffer. That's why I like 15%. It gives me a little buffer. It makes sure that if I screw up and it doesn't sell for as much, the rehab goes over, or maybe my financing goes up because it took me longer. That's the other thing that will chew into your deal, is it takes you longer to get the rehab done, you go over budget, and it doesn't sell for as much. I want to flip houses where I screw up and still make good money. I don't want to do deals where I screw up and don't make very much money or lose money. That's not how I want to flip houses. So that's why I highly recommend the 15% formula. Now, just to throw this out there, if you're a wholesaler, then what's the formula? Well, it's whatever your buyers are paying less your wholesale fee. So if you want to make 20 grand as a wholesale fee, you would have to subtract that from this number. So it would be ARV times 0.75 or whatever the percentage is, minus 50 in repairs, minus your $20,000 wholesale fee would equal 230 as your buy price as a wholesaler. And this one, it would be 210 if you're going to wholesale to a flipper at 70%. So your job as a wholesaler would be, what is the market paying? In Phoenix, in markets like that, they're paying like 80% is the formula because it's a very hot market, highly competitive. So the flippers in Phoenix are okay to make a very small profit. It's a volume play in Phoenix. So I don't like that model. I don't want to be a volume flipper. I want to be a margin flipper. I can do a whole lot fewer deals and make a lot of money. I just have to be super selective, make sure I'm only picking up good deals. That's why I like to specialize in this right here, the 400 to 600. I love that price point because it pushes me up into higher margins. Think about a $600,000 house. I'm making a $90,000 profit at 15%, at the 70% formula. You see that? So again, flipping houses is nothing more than math. Now you still got to renovate it and you still got to know what to do. You still got to manage a contractor. You still got to go get the money. You still got to get an agent. But I mean, understanding where to buy a good deal is most of the game to flipping. You can figure out how to fix it up. You can figure out how to hire the contractors. You can figure out how to find a good agent to resell it. You can figure out how to get the money to buy it. You can figure all that part out. That's not the more complicated part. The complicated part, where everybody screws this up, is they buy wrong. They overpay, their margins are too tight, they run into some friction or any kind of challenge on the deal, which is normal, and then they don't make money. That's what you want to avoid in this business. Avoid that, and your success rate will go through the roof. Again, get that deal analyzer. Just go to mydealanalyzer.com. And I want to tell you guys that I'm always looking for good fix and flip deals. I do like to buy at this formula. If you find a good deal that fits that formula, bring it to me. I'll pay you a finder fee, and you can bring as many deals as you want to me. I'll pay you $10,000 for every single deal you bring that meets my criteria. Just go to my 10K check to learn more about that. and I'll see you on the next video.